hope you've all had at least an okay start to 2021. Personally, after giving myself a 2-month break, I am so ready to get back at it, and I've got some absolute bangers lined up for you too, but first, let's start with the 2021 Razer Blade Pro 17. Now, with each new iteration, obviously we've got some pretty sweet new internal hardware, but we've still got the same old design, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, myself and tons of other people love that minimalistic look, but like, how many more years are we going to be seeing the same thing? Speaking of that sweet new hardware, the Pro 17 has a bunch of different SKUs, all of which come with Intel's 10th gen i7-10875H. The model I was sent with came with the RTX 3070, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 512 gig NVMe SSD. But you can also save a little money and go with the RTX 3060 or splurge and go big with the RTX 3080 and 32 gigs of RAM. Now, one important thing to note about the RTX 3000 series GPUs and these laptops though, is that they're all Max-Q versions. I mean, technically the Max-Q naming scheme is deprecated apparently, but if you go into the NVIDIA control panel and then to system information, you can check and see if it's a Max-Q version or not. Now, based on what I've seen, all the Max-Q versions start at a 60 watt TDP and go up to 90. Non-Max-Q versions start at 115 watts and go up to 150. Oddly, the 3070 in this unit runs at 100 watts. For ports, we've got 3 USB Type A's, 1 USB-C, a Thunderbolt 3 port, HDMI 2.1, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, SD card reader, and the power port. Now, if you wanted to pop off the bottom panel, you can swap out the RAM and wireless card, although it's an Intel card with Wi-Fi 6, so I'd probably leave that alone. But there's also 2 M.2 slots. One of them's already populated, but the other one's empty and ready to go for a fresh secondary SSD. The keyboard deck and everything here is still the same, which I'll be honest, I'm a little disappointed with because the deck's so big, it just feels like a lot of wasted space. Like, all Razer needs to do is dial down those huge speaker grills and there'd be plenty of room for maybe a number pad or some shortcut keys to switch between battery saver and gaming modes, for example. I don't know, either way, the per-key RGB backlighting looks awesome. It's bright and super crisp looking. The keys still have a short travel distance, but they're still nice to type with. The glass touchpad is accurate, it's large, feels great, and has amazing finger glide. That's what she's... Alright, speakers. So contrary to the size of the grills, the speakers aren't nearly that big, although they are a decent size, and the resonance chambers are actually pretty large. But even after tweaking around in the THX audio app, I couldn't get them to a point where I was happy while watching content or listening to music. Like, the mids are clean and present, but everything else is just meh. There's 3 different IPS display options you can choose from. So we've got 1080p at 360 Hz, 1440p at 165 Hz, and a 4K option at 120 Hz. I've got the 1440p 165 Hz panel here, and I gotta say, my compliments to the chef. This is one delicious display. Now, obviously, everything's crisp with that 1440p resolution, color gamuts are good, max brightness is above average, and of course with 165 Hz refresh rate, gaming's as smooth as butter. My only stupid complaint is that while the display is a 1-finger opener, the hinges are a tad bit too stiff, and so it requires a little more upward force when opening, which would be fine if the little slit for your finger wasn't so bloody shallow. So personally, I ended up just like using 2 hands, putting pressure on both sides and then opening. Now, before I get into the performance, Razer made me promise to mention that this is a pre-production unit I've got here. So even though everything should be good to go, the final retail models might come with some more optimization, meaning you may or may not see better performance than the results I'm presenting here. Anyways, when I stress tested, while things got pretty warm at between 85 to 90 degrees Celsius, it never thermal throttled, but it does power limit throttle right out the gate, pulling the clock speeds down to an average 3.3 gigahertz, which is okay, but still a bit away from the all-core max clock of 4.3 gigahertz. Now, I have a feeling it just needs to be undervolted a bit, so if the final retail units are still running the same, that might be something you can try on your own to squeak out a bit more performance. Gaming's a ton of fun. There's enough horsepower to push some really good FPS numbers on ultra graphics at 1440p, and when you drop it down to 1080, it gets obviously even better. But for games like Doom Eternal or Overwatch, for example, I mean, you may as well just leave it at 1440p. You're already passing the display's max refresh rate may as well enjoy the max resolution too, right? Battery life on gaming laptops isn't often something to write home about, and in this case, we've got a 70.5 watt-hour battery that gave me 5 hours and 20 minutes at 50% brightness with the Windows Power Mode slider set to better battery and NVIDIA Optimus enabled. So you can still get work done or, fart around with everyday type tasks for a little while, just don't stray from a power outlet for too long. Anyways, that's the early 2021 Razer Blade Pro 17. Like usual, it's a premium gaming laptop with a price to match. It's thin, but it doesn't sacrifice on game performance even as we enter the era of 1440p gaming laptops. I would have really liked to have seen some sort of design change though, like with the keyboard deck, for example, and maybe some better speakers, but neither of those things would be reason for me not to buy this if I was in the market for a high-end gaming laptop. All right, I think that does it for this one. If you liked the video, maybe show me some love with that thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers.